Helo, siamai. Fel rhan o'n gyfres fideos ar rhwystrau ymarfer corff, mi fydd ein hymarferydd lles seicolegol Bethan Hysticler yn sôn am gymhelliant. Mi fydd hi'n esbonio'r strategaethau a'r camau a gall person gymryd i gadw fynd ac i gadw cymhelliant.
Hi everyone, my name is Bethan. I'm one of the psychological wellbeing practitioners in the wellbeing service, and this is another video as part of our mini-series exploring some common barriers to exercise that people might face. Again, if you would like to get a bit more information about this or explore this in maybe a bit more of an interactive way, please consider coming along to our barriers to exercise workshop. So the barrier that we're going to be looking at today is a very common one that we do hear from a lot of staff and is really common in general in the public, is motivation. I just don't have the motivation to exercise. I just can't be bothered, right? Really common one. The interesting thing about motivation, and what I'm about to say is going to sound quite counterintuitive, but the interesting thing about motivation is that we tend to wait for motivation to appear before we do something like exercise, right? So most of us will sit in the house and think, oh, maybe I could go for a walk, but I can't really be bothered. And we wait for that motivation to just appear. Now, this sounds a bit counterintuitive, but we almost have to make motivation happen. Motivation won't just suddenly appear, on its own. For a lot of people, the motivation to exercise comes after they start exercising, once they start to experience the positive benefits of it, right? Because exercise is hard work, it's effortful. We often as human beings choose to move away from things that are more difficult and move towards the things that are easier, right? So if we're sat in our house, we're all nice and cozy, we're watching the TV, we think to ourselves, I could go for a walk right now, but we know that's going to require far more effort and it's more comfortable to stay on the sofa and watch the TV, right? It's much more comfortable to do that. So we're more likely to move away from that exercise, and that's how human beings work. So the motivation for exercise, again, often comes once people start to experience those positive benefits, but that's after they've actually started doing the exercise. So what this means is that we have to try and find other ways to motivate ourselves the first few times, right? It's going to feel a little bit like push starting a car uphill, right? It's going to take a lot of effort to start that exercise. But once we're in that regular routine and we're seeing those positive benefits, it becomes easier and easier. Now, in terms of thinking about how we can motivate ourselves, the first thing is to think about breaking it into smaller chunks. Our brain can quite easily become quite overwhelmed by big tasks. So if we're thinking to ourselves, right now I've got to go and change, put my trainers on, go out, go for my walk for a couple of miles, come back, get changed again, maybe have a shower. That sounds like a huge task. And the brain is more likely to think, that's going to require a lot of effort. That's a big task. I feel overwhelmed by that. Break it down into smaller chunks, right? So say to yourself, I just have to get my trainers on. Right, that's all you have to do. Just focus on putting the trainers on. Then once the trainers are on, I just have to leave the house. So I just have to step outside, right? I just have to walk to the end of the street. Just walk to the end of the street. Right? I just have to walk to that next lamppost. What's that next lamppost? So we're breaking it down into those smaller chunks. Now this works in a few ways. The first thing is it doesn't seem like such a big task, so it seems almost easier to kind of deal with. But also it kind of builds our confidence as we're going. So we get through the first couple of chunks and we think, this is actually all right. I'm doing okay. I'm doing well here. I can carry on. So does that. But also, there might be times where we do put the trainers on, we do leave the house, we get to the end of our street and we think, do you know what, I really can't be bothered. I really can't. At least if we go back then, we've still walked to the end of the street and back. We've done something. We've taken that small step towards movement. We might not have done what we intended to. We might not have done what we thought we should have, but we've still done something. Any exercise is better than none. So breaking it down into smaller chunks can often be a really good way of dealing with motivation, because we're not trying to motivate ourselves to do a big task. We're just trying to motivate ourselves to do a small task each, at a time. Another thing that can be really beneficial, and this is something that we do explore in a lot more detail in our barriers to exercise workshop, so it might be worth coming along to that if you think that this information would be helpful for you, but it's thinking about your why. It's thinking about why do I bother? When I'm sat on the sofa and I think to myself, I could go for a walk right now, or I should go for a walk right now. Why? Is it just because society tells us that we should? Is it because we feel like we should because other people in our lives tell us that we should? Or is there a lifestyle that we want to live? Is there a certain life that we want to live that we're not living right now? Is there a value? Is there something, underneath all of the difficult emotions about exercise? Is there something that is driving us or kind of pushing us to do it? Again, it's natural for us to want to move away from things that are difficult and uncomfortable, but it might be that actually we've got a value there. We've got something that really would drive us with exercise. So really tap into that and think, okay, why should I be going for a walk right now? And is it something that I want? Is that the life that I want to live? And how can I connect that to a value that is going to help to kind of motivate me? Those times where it feels difficult to exercise, can I tap into something deeper inside me? What's really difficult about motivation with exercise is that even people who regularly exercise will have days where they just don't feel motivated to do it. That's not abnormal. So even people who are probably Olympic athletes have days where they think, I really can't be bothered with this today. We all get those days. So it's about tapping into something deeper in us. What do I really value? What's the life that I want to live? What do I want my life to look like in 5, 10, 15 years' time? And what is going to help me get to that? What kind of activity can I do to help me kind of move towards that life that I want to live rather than kind of moving away from it? Also think about kind of long-term gains. So again, exercise in the short term is effortful. It's uncomfortable. It's not something that we might enjoy in the short term. But what is the long-term gain? Remind ourselves of what the long-term positive benefits are for us, specifically for us. So again, have a little think, what is it that exercise could give you in life? What would your life look like if you were able to exercise on a regular basis? Is it something around confidence? Is it something around weight? Is it something about boosting mood? Have a little think, what are those positive long-term gains that you could personally get from exercise? And again, remind yourself of those the next time you feel kind of unmotivated or feel like you don't really want to, but you feel like you do in some ways. So I hope that's been helpful. Again, if you want to explore this in any more detail, please have a think about coming along to our Barriers to Exercise workshop.
Diolch archwilio. Os hoffech chi fynychu ein gweithdi'r rhwystrau ymarfer corff i archwilio ymhellach sut mae'r rhain yn effeithio arnoch chi, cysylltwch â ni gan ddefnyddio'r cyfeiriad e-bost ar y sgrin.